Hello everyone, welcome to the program. I'm your host Mike Ventura, and today we're talking about how to prune fruit trees. And when I say fruit trees, I'm talking about peaches and plum, nectarine, apricots. And on today's program, I'm going to talk about the pruning of the peach tree, nectarine tree, because they're both related, and the fig tree. And the reason I'm picking on those trees, the figs, because the pruning practice on a fig is then completely different than peach, plum, nectarine, totally different. But what I want to stress though is that proper pruning of fruit trees is extremely important to get good fruit that year. Also, if you've never pruned a fruit tree in your life, I strongly suggest you get a book called How to Prune Fruit Trees by R. Sanford Martin. It is an extremely good book. It's a paperback book. You can find it online or your local bookstores, but it does a great job. It's a paperback book, and the pictures will put you right next to the branch so you can follow along, because pruning fruit trees takes patience, and if you do it improperly, what can happen is you can actually prune the fruit spurs right out of the tree, and you don't want to do that. So let's talk about the proper pruning of a fruit tree. Again, right now we're talking about the peach and the nectarine. So at this time of year, go ahead and do it. The fruit on the peach and nectarine is born on last year's wood, which means you can take the wood back about 1/3. You notice on the peach and nectarines that on the buds, you can have 2 skinny buds and 1 fat bud when you're looking at your picture in that book, or when you actually go look at the trees. The fat bud is the fruit bud. So when you prune it back, you want to make sure that you prune that back so that 1/3 back. Now, also when you prune, you want to prune away from the bud. You don't want to prune into this way, you want to prune away from it, okay? So it's important how you prune these trees. And taking any dead wood that might be on the inside of the trees, taking any crossing wood on the inside of the trees, taking any wood that's water sprouts, you don't want those. If you have any water sprouts on the trunk of the trees, take that out. Ultimately, what you want to do is try to get a nice open crown inside the tree. And with the one, and I keep referring back to the 1/3 because that's where your fruit spurs are going to be located at. If you see any areas where you've had any wood damage or broken branch from last year, take those out. And again, you want to make certain that your pruning equipment is nice and sharp. That way you get nice clean cuts. And this applies to the peach and nectarine. What I want to stress is that you do not need to use any kind of tree sealant when you're pruning your fruit trees. And the reason being is trees have this natural reaction wood, which is called callus wood, which will develop after the pruning has been done. All right, so it's important that when you make your pruning cuts, let the tree callus on its own. You don't need to use any kind of sealant or white paint. Don't do that. Just let the tree callus on its own, and you do just fine. Your irrigation practices on your fruit trees, after you've got them all pruned back and they're all good to go, they benefit from drip irrigation. They do not need spray head irrigation. Reason means you don't want to get the crowns of the trees wet. You want to keep those crowns and the trunk dry. But it's important also that the moisture gets down deep. Fruit trees want a well-drained acidic soil. Now what you're going to notice on my YouTube is I always refer back to the soil and producing and growing plant material in a healthy soil that's got a slightly acidic soil around 6.5 to 7.0. Once again, if you have not grown plant material before and you're not familiar with soils, I strongly suggest going out and get your soil pH done. You go to a soil lab or get a soil pH meter. And again, you can find a soil pH meter at your home improvement stores, also online. Reason being is because fruit trees, they want a well-drained acidic soil. They don't do well in just clay soil. Nutrients tend to get tied up. So in order to produce a good crop, you want to have a good working soil for yourself. Also on the fruit trees, let's talk about what you're going to be putting on the trunk of the trees. After you've gone through and you prune all the crowns up and you got that 1/3 back, you want to go through and get a product called Tanglefoot. At least I suggest you get a product called Tanglefoot. What is Tanglefoot? Tanglefoot is like a really jelly-like compound that you can get in tubes, and I strongly suggest you wear gloves when putting it out because Tanglefoot is pretty messy to work with. And what you want to do is you want to wrap the trunks of the trees in several locations on the trunk of the tree and maybe a couple of scaffolds. And you can put the Tanglefoot out maybe, 2 inches wide. And reason being is Tanglefoot will do a great job at trapping crawling insects that have been moving up the trunk of the tree, such as ants. Does a great job of controlling the ants. And one nice thing about Tanglefoot, it keeps its flexibility. throughout the year, so it doesn't get hard on the trunk of the trees. It is messy to work with, so as you get through working with it with the gloves, just discard the gloves. Now let's talk a little bit about doing the fig trees. Now, fig trees are completed prune, totally different than that of a peach and nectarine. On a fig tree, what you're going to see are these, what they call the eyes, or they're like bud scars, or the eyes. And rule of thumb when you're working with fig trees, you want to go about the 5th eye from a main scaffold. And what you're going to do is you just count up, but you want to have them all facing out. You don't want to have any branches pointing in at the pruning cut location. So have them going out so you get a nice balanced crown effect from the tree. And once again, you can put the tanglefoot on the trunk of the fig tree, just like you're doing for the peach and nectarine, and also a little on the scaffolds. And again, it'll keep any crawling insects come from the soil, going up the tree, will do a very nice job controlling them. One benefit that you really want to focus on also, if you can, is to apply dormant oil to your fruit trees, whether it be peach, plum, nectarine, apricot, fig. And you don't have to put it on citrus trees. Just put it on the stone fruits. And you want to put a nice application on the trunk if you can. That will actually act as a good preventative for certain insects that might be harboring on the tree, and also to control any kind of disease organisms that might be on the tree or overwintering on the tree. Another very important point I want to bring out is use of mulch. Mulch is outstanding to work with in fruit trees. And because, again, if you have a soil that has a little bit of clay to it, the mulch will act as a nice way of keeping the compaction down, because it acts as a shock absorber, if you will, to the soil. Also keeps the weed situation down, because why? You're interfering with what weeds want, which are light, water, and space. So you're keeping the weed population down. And you've also insulated the soil. It does a very, very nice job with that. So again, mulch works just great. This is the time of year when you want to start getting all these good sound cultural practices going. And another one is the vertical mulching. I talked about it previously on another video. Vertical mulching is outstanding, and stone fruits love the vertical mulching, as will the citrus trees. So don't be afraid to get that vertical mulching on all your fruit trees. And again, on the vertical mulching, you want to use non-perforated PVC tubing. Go down maybe about 18-24 inches into the soil. From the radius off trunk, if you go on a fruit tree about 24 inches, maybe 3 feet away from the trunk of the tree, and you want to put a drain cover on top of the pipe, just so you don't have a trip and fall situation. Bottom of the pipe is open, and that way when you put your fertilizers, your soil amendments inside the pipe, it's going to go directly into the root zone, and the tree will greatly benefit from this. And that's what you want, because you want to maintain a very, very good soil to get the fruit trees off to a really good start. So as I said, on all my programs, what I do is I do a little bit of a recap as far as what we talked about. You want to get, if you can, How to Prune Fruit Trees by R. Stanford Martin, outstanding book for fruit trees. After you made your pruning cuts, don't seal the wounds, but go through and let the tree do its own reaction wood, or it's called callus wood. It will do a fine job with that. Tanglefoot to put on the trunks of the trees in several locations, just to trap any crawling insects. Dormant oil, which works very, very well, and that's done one time a year, and that's again just to protect the trees going into the beginning of the growing season. Also, what I want to stress is that make sure your trees are grown in a full sun environment, very, very important, and that you give the trees plenty of room when that tree starts to grow. You don't want to crowd the crowns out, and the crowns, of course, are where the foliage of the tree is going to be produced. You want to give them adequate room to grow and develop, so that they have plenty of good airflow going through, but they're not competing with other plant material for sunlight. Okay, so, and pruning fruit trees is done one time a year. All right, folks, with that, go enjoy the garden.